Hey H&K fans, James here with another video for you. And this one is one that I am super excited about, as I'm sure many of you are, because this is a new product release video. We don't get these very often from H&K. In fact, it's been 10 years since we've had a brand new product released with the VP9 series, but now we've got it with the CC9. So I'm excited that you guys are here to watch this video. I'm going to do my best to showcase all the features and benefits of the weapon and give you a lot of background information that you're probably not going to get elsewhere. So thanks for tuning in. Why don't we just grab yourself a tasty beverage, find yourself somewhere comfortable to sit, and we will dive right in. Okay, so what is the CC9? Well, it is a micro compact pistol. And I know that there are guys already firing up the comment section with statements like, "Hey, late to the party again, H&K." Everybody else has already got a micro compact pistol, and I would say, yeah, you're right, they probably do. But they don't have this, and in my opinion, this has been worth the wait. We'll get more into that later in the video, but I think that you're going to see, especially when you get your hands on this and shoot it, what a difference this is versus the competitors. So kind of hold those fiery comments until after we get through the video, and then you can really make an initial judgment on what you've got here. This is a first for numerous reasons for H&K, and I want to kind of preload this up front before we dive into all the close-ups on the gun and things like that. This is the first micro compact from H&K. They've done subcompacts and compacts before, but diving into this is a new one for H&K. And the reason why, and I'll get into this more in some deeper dive information later, is it's just more challenging, I think, as everybody understands, to make a smaller weapon be able to perform like a larger weapon. And H&K has never been the kind of company that just responds rapidly to changing market trends. They're not the guys who just want to get a product out to get a product out. They want to take their time and their due diligence to make sure it's ready. So when those guys say, "Hey, you're late to the party," what I would be able to educate you on is that for a new handgun development and production project for H&K, those generally take about 5 years. This one's taken almost 8 years. We're about 7.5 at this point in releasing it. So what that tells you is they took a very hard look at this, and they took their time to make sure it was right. In fact, I've known about this project for probably 5 or 6 years now, and actually got my hands on a pre-production example, got the ability to test fire it, run it, and break it down about 3.5 years ago. So to see a product that I would say most other companies would say, "That's good enough, let's get it out there," H&K took another 3.5 years after that to continue to refine it before releasing it here for you today. So that, in my opinion, is a big deal, and it should speak volumes to the quality of the firearm that you're getting here. Now, another first. This is the first firearm from H&K that has been completely designed, developed, and produced here in the U.S. at HK USA. And again, I'm sure there's guys that are already firing up the comment section about, "Oh, this is going to be the end of H&K, everything's going to go downhill." And I understand why you would have that thought. We can all call up examples of other well-known European firearms companies that have moved to the U.S. for their own production capabilities, and we've seen established firearms from Europe then get produced here in the U.S., and we've seen quality control issues, fit and finish things. They just haven't stood up to the previous European examples of those guns, and I'm not going to name names here. We all know which ones we're talking about. Or companies that have set up U.S. production, and then the new products that they produce don't live up to the same reputation. I get that. There's been companies that have rushed new products out to the market, and then they have used their either commercial-based customers or LE or even mill customers to beta test those products. That's not what H&K has done here. So they have really invested the time, money, and effort. So let me break that down a little bit more. Okay, H&K back in the 1970s establishes a U.S. footprint here, first in Arlington, Virginia, to distribute, market, and sell the products from Germany. And that's what we would see, into the 1990s. They'd move around a bit. They went to Chantilly, they went to Sterling, then to Ashburn. And then we saw a separation of the company for legal reasons from HKI that would handle the commercial and local law enforcement sales, and then HKD or defense that would handle the federal government sales and for LE, and then all the military sales. That HK defense side would stay in Ashburn, Virginia. Commercial side would first go to Trussville, Alabama, and then to Columbus, Georgia. And the decision in Columbus, Georgia was based around the plan at the time to set up U.S. production capability to manufacture the XM8 for the U.S. military contract they thought they were going to get. When that fell apart, they halted the larger expansion of capability and just housed that HKI side there. Well, over the years, and most recently, they've been quietly building out that expansion. And we've seen, if you follow H&K Weapons, the MR series of rifles, the HK45 series of pistols, those have been manufactured here in the U.S., where the majority of the components are still made in Germany and then sent to HK USA, and then a few of the components are made here. For example, the HK45 series pistols, the molds for the receivers are formed here in the U.S. on the same machinery that they make them in Germany. They've got the same equipment. They form that, and they put all the components together. It's proofed and test fired and stamped, and it's manufactured in the U.S. Well, now with the CC9, we see this is the first pistol that is completely designed, developed, and produced here. They've now got a design team. They've got an R&D team. They've got quality control. They've got manufacturing. All that capability coming together, and this is their first. This is also the first of many new products that we're going to see designed, developed, and manufactured in the U.S. So for an H&K fan base, you should be incredibly excited about that because you're going to start seeing these new releases roll out over the coming months and years. I can't talk about what those are here, but if you are a fan of H&K Weapons, you should be excited about that. Another first. This is the first firearm that H&K has ever produced that has been completely focused on the U.S. commercial market. Everything else that we have seen, HK416, G36, these guns, USPs, all these guns behind me, they were developed for a military or law enforcement contract. And then, if there is some kind of commercial application that can be found out of that, well, H&K wants to get a little bit more return on their investment. They're going to release those, but they've always been based off of military or law enforcement requirement. In the CC9, we see H&K USA looking at this and saying, we understand there's a demand for a micro compact. We haven't built one to this point, not because we couldn't, but because we wanted to make sure that it could live up to those same standards that we all expect of reliability and durability from an H&K firearm. Like I said, I'll get more into that better. But the fact that they are now responding to demands of U.S. Commercial, LE, and even mill desires, wants, that is something that we should all be really excited about. And because they are now a U.S. production capability, their timelines in these ability to respond and produce these and produce them in greater numbers to meet the demands will be greatly enhanced. You're no longer having to be tied to the programs that come out of H&K Germany, which obviously are exceptional, but H&K Germany is looking at a global market, and they are focused primarily on military and law enforcement contracts. So, the commercial side here for the US, sometimes, depending on how busy they are, like they're really busy at the moment, you might expect, it can be some white noise, and it doesn't fall all the way up to the top of their priority ladder. Now we have H&K USA able to focus directly on you. So a series of firsts that you should be excited about with the CC9. So let's talk about the CC9 itself, what it is, what you get. Well, it is, as I've said before, it is a micro compact pistol. Smaller in dimensions than what you'll see, and I'll show you some comparisons here on the workbench later in the video against other models that you'll be familiar with, so that you can get a really representation about, dimensionally how different it is. But generally, it's going to be a little bit smaller on the front and the back end, top to bottom. But where you really notice it is how narrow it is from front to back, or from side to side. And this is obviously designed at being much more capable as an everyday, concealed carry type pistol. We all know that the bigger gun you get, the more difficult it is to conceal. That's not the case here with this pistol. So, what do you get with this pistol? Well, you're going to get new packaging, which is kind of nice that they changed that up. We're all familiar with the traditional clamshell plastic case that the pistols come in with. They obviously are durable enough to withstand getting shoved around inside the gun store and to travel to where you are. But most of us, I would suspect, at least I know me and the people that I hang out with, we open that up, we take out the mags and the side panels and the things you need, and then you just throw that clamshell box into the attic or into your closet. So they've gone to a simple cardboard box, very identifiable when it's up on the shelf at the gun store. But to give you something that is actually more useful, especially when you're going to the range, we now have a nice zippered padded case that will slide very neatly into your range bag or backpack. I think this is far more useful, and it's something that we normally only see with higher end weapons. A lot of custom firearm companies go to something like this. Most of the entry-level standard handguns that you see, that you don't get much more than a cardboard box. So I think it's a nice step that H&K has done this. Great logo on here. You've got two divided sections, one on the bottom that's going to have the little Velcro tabs for your pistol and a spare mag with a little separation, and then you've got slots here for additional mags and your additional back strap. We'll get to that later as well. And you get your manual. I actually really proudly had very early access to this example you see here. In fact, such early access that when I got mine, it didn't even come with the manual because they hadn't even finished it and printed it out yet. But manuals are great, show you everything that you need to know about the pistol design. Don't just throw that away, take time to read it as well. But that's what you get in the box, and it'll come with 2 magazines. If you are in a band state, you're going to get 2 of the 10-round flush fit magazines. If you're everywhere else, you're going to get a 10 and a 12-round magazine. We'll showcase these a little closer later with some others in comparison. But like the pistol, they are micro compact. It is impressive that they've been able to fit as many rounds in them as they can. And I found these magazines to be incredibly reliable. A little stiff initially loading to that maximum capacity, but once you break them in with some training, it'll become much easier. But very interesting to see those on offer. But that's what you get with the pistol. I'll roll in some footage here as well on some of the features that you'll get with it as well when we get to the workbench project. As far as holsters, I know everybody's going to ask about that because we always get that challenge when a new pistol comes out from any company. You immediately want to carry it, and you're trying to figure out what holster designs you work with. I'm excited that H&K has leaned forward into this, and they've already got holsters with Weber Tactical. A&R Designs made this nice in the waistband as well as an outside the waistband style holster. That's from A&R Designs. And my buddies at G-Code are already hard at work in producing a new concealed carry holster as well. So you can look in those 3 locations. And when I got mine, I even went into my drawers and started looking through all my stuff, and I found one of my old light carry shoulder holster rigs from G-Code. And as you can see, without the optic mounted, it mounts into this holster as well. So you may have a holster already that will fit your pistol, but if you don't, you can look in those areas. So now let's take a look at all of the specific features of the new CC9. Okay, so here, I know this is what you've all been waiting for. You want to get a close look at the gun, I'm going to give it to you. So let's go over all the unique features of the pistol. We'll start at the top. You can see the sights on here. They come with a standard set of blacked out rear and a front tritium dot option. This is a really great set of sights. It's not the norm from pistols of this size. A lot of times companies, they just think of it as an afterthought, and you get really diminutive sights on a pistol of this size category. Not the case with H&K. These are easy to pick up rapidly for your eyesight, and you don't have to worry about, like in the past, having a luminous dot or white dot, and you've got to get a special edition or send it off to somebody to swap your sights out. They come standard now with these tritium sights. Also, what it comes standard with is the optics plate. So all of them are optics ready. You just remove the plate. You can see I have already mounted on a red dot. I went with the Meprolite. You can see this here. This is the MPODS. I chose this one because of how compact it is. You can see it. It's the width of the pistol. It's very low profile. It fits with what I want a micro compact to do, and so far it has been perfect for me. It's a nice small red dot. Works really well. Most of the other guns that I've seen so far that we've been running with H&K have had different hollow sun optics. Again, you've got lots of choices, but if you're going to get a micro compact one, you're going to want a smaller size. This one's worked really great for me. Unlike the VP9 series, which requires a mounting plate for the specific optic you're going to mount, this does not. The new mounting solution they have on here allows you to mount the optic of your choice directly to the slide. And I don't know how well this will come out, but I can just barely see my front and rear sights through the base of this, so I don't need to go to taller suppressor height sights with this. If I had a failure of my red dot, I can still see my sights, and that's really cool. On the slide, you get front cocking serrations if you're the kind of guy who likes to do press check up there, and you get rear cocking serrations. You can see the CC9 and H&K logo here on that side, and on the other side, you see those carry over as well. You can see your end cover plate over the striker system there at the rear. Now moving again from the front, you'll see a 2-section Picatinny mounting position here and a large trigger guard there. This feature is kind of nuanced. You might not even notice it if you look here. You can see there on the left and on the right side. This, I think, is really cool. And this is something that a lot of us have been doing for years. We get a gun, you put a little bit of, non-skid or skateboard tape up there on the front. What this is meant to be a reference point. So as I form my grip, my thumb hits right on that. It feels that texture and it knows, okay, that's where my thumb should be. I've got a good solid grip. And on the opposite side, when I come off the trigger and I'm manipulating the firearm, I put my finger right there. I know my finger's off the trigger because I can feel that. I really like that feature. Here's your takedown lever. We'll talk more about that when we get into the safety features and your, kind of traditional trigger safety. Again, we'll get into that in the safety features. You have ambidextrous slide lock, slide release on the left side, and like with the VP9, they've recessed it until it gets to this point. It is very low profile. It does not stick out much, but it's got great texture and it's easy to manipulate. When I first got this out of the box, it was a little stiff on releasing, but as soon as I started putting some rounds through it, it loosened right up, and I've had no issues with being able to actuate it. And it is also here on the right side for left-handed shooters or ambidextrous use. Really nice design, very low profile. Moving down, you'll see it has a button-style magazine release. I know the purists from H&K will be upset about that. I want a paddle mag release. I got to tell you, I was kind of disappointed when I first saw it, but I'm a very adaptable guy. It comes from my training background. I've had no problems adapting to this. It hasn't forced me to change my grip in any way or slowed me down. And what I like best about it is it actually functions from both sides. So it's not one of these where you have to, take the gun apart and switch it over to the other side if you're left-handed. I can activate it from either side. You're also going to notice the grip texture. It's got very subtle finger grooves here on the front, and the texture on the front strap, the side straps, and the back strap is, in my opinion, just enough. It's not overly aggressive. If you want something really aggressive, you can get some grip tape. Companies that'll obviously offer that as well. But for a gun that's going to be carried primarily against your body, most likely in an appendix or a 3 or 4 o'clock position thing, this texture is just enough to really be grippy without rubbing against your skin or your shirt. And then you'll notice that we have exchangeable grip panels. Your pistol in the box will come with 2 grip panels. You have a standard size grip panel and then what they call the large grip panel. I have the large grip panel here in my hand, and the benefit of this, and what I will tell you, is that most people, and I've seen this from guys who show up to a training course with a P30 or a VP9, they've taken their gun directly out of the box. They've never messed with any of the panels, and they go and shoot. And what you're trying to do with your grip panels is fit it to the size of your hand. Not just that it feels comfortable, but we're looking for the position of your finger. So little fundamental stuff, if you haven't understood this, what you're trying to do to get the best accuracy potential possible is take the trigger and put it on the center of your most distal pad of your finger. If your grip is too small, then your finger will extend too far into the trigger. And in that case, if it extends around like that, when I pull the trigger, I'm going to be naturally pulling the gun off the left. Conversely, if I have too large, and the tip of my finger is barely touching the trigger, I'll pull off to the right. So I want to get the center of my pad on there. Most people who have medium to large size hands, you'll want to put a larger back strap on. And unlike a lot of companies where the back strap changes really just down here and pushes the bottom of your palm away, what changing the back strap on the CC9 does is it changes the length of pull from the front of the trigger to the back. So if I measured these two together and I pulled out my VP9 SK or a full-size VP9, the large back strap on a CC9, which is a smaller gun, and we'll show that dimensionally here in a moment, is actually the same length distance between the front and rear of a VP9 or a VP9 SK. So they've really done a good job with figuring out how to do that as well. And then on the base, you can see that they've chopped off the bottom of the grip. You can still get these fingers, your pinkies off, but we'll get to where that fits on the magazine. You can see there, and there's a little indentation there, like they've done with the earlier pistols, that allow you to grasp in there and pull on the magazines. So with that said, now let's look at the magazines. As I mentioned before, in your box, you will get 2 magazines. You'll get 2 10-round magazines if you are in a band state, or you'll get a 10 and a 12-round mag if you are in a standard state. The magazine bodies are identical except for the additional witness holes. And then what you see here at the base is the difference in the base plate. The standard base plate is more of a flush fit. The extended base plate comes down and gives you just a little pink extension, but I want you to notice this little cutout here at the base. That works with your cutout on the bottom of the grip. So if I put my 10-round magazine in the gun, now you'll see where if I had to strip and rip this magazine out, I've got that texture. I've got medium to large size hands. I can just barely get my pinky on the bottom of this with the 10-round flush fit magazine. But for most people, obviously for capacity and for comfort and better fundamental shooting, if you put the 12-round magazine, you can see I can now get my full hand on the weapon. Really, really nice. And these things, when you remove them from the weapon, I mean, they just rock it out. Really well designed, very functional with the weapon. So let's showcase that against other designs. On my left, I have the new 12-round magazine from the CC9. On the right, I have my VP9 SK or P30 SK, P2000 SK 12-round magazine, where you'll see here top to bottom, very much the same length. Obviously, this one's got a finger groove extension there at the base, so it's a little longer. But where you'll notice, again, the major difference is going to be in the overall width dimensions. This is significantly more narrow than the standard magazines that you see here on the right. That leads to the compactness overall and the comfort in carrying the weapon all day. If we compare the pistols side by side, okay, if I lay, here's my VP9 SK, you can see I've got a larger red dot on there. I've got the taller suppressor height sights. I've got my Surefire light on there, so a little bit of a separation. But if I lay them on top of each other, what you'll notice is the VP9 SK, even as this subcompact, is slightly longer here on the front. You can notice the trigger guard slightly larger. At the base, they're pretty much the same length with no magazine in there. The noticeable difference is when I hold them up side by side, and you should be able to see the overall, width dimensions. The CC9 is about a third as wide as the VP9 or VP9 SK. You can see the wider grip panels here make it even wider. That's where the main difference, a little bit in length, but mainly in the width of the gun. Again, here's a P2000 SK, slick, no optic on there. If I lay the CC9 on top, you're going to see the similar things. From the rear, just a little bit longer there in the front, about the same length on the base. But when I hold them side by side, you'll again notice the CC9 is about a third the width overall over there. So what does that mean? It means that this is easier to carry. As small as a subcompact is, there are just sometimes where that extra width of the pistol and the magazine just means that it's a little bit more uncomfortable or to carry all day, a little more difficult to conceal, especially the lighter weight, the clothing choices that you're having on the weapon are. But hopefully that gives you an appreciation for some of the features and a comparison on the size. So now let's get into some of the functional features and safety features internal to the weapon. Okay, first of all, in the safety features, we'll reference our VP9 series because, of course, they want to base a lot of their design features off of the success of the VP9. The first thing we're going to see here is your traditional trigger safety. As you can see here at the back of the trigger, there's a stop there. If I try and pull the trigger back to the rear, it engages the stop. I have to defeat this center trigger safety. You see when I push forward on it, it pivots the stop around the rear, and now I can pull the trigger back to the rear. Well, they did the same features on your CC9. Can't pull the trigger back to the rear because of the trigger stop at the rear of the trigger, but when I depress the center, now the trigger can go back to the rear. So that's your first safety feature. If you follow the fundamental safety rule of don't put your finger on the trigger until you intend to fire, then the weapon cannot go off because of that feature. The next feature that carries over from your VP9 series is your takedown lever. Okay, so let me put a magazine in the weapon to showcase this. If I've got a mag loaded and I try and rotate the takedown lever, it will not work. I must first lock the slide back to the rear. This encourages me to safely inspect the condition of the chamber, but even when it's locked back to the rear, I still cannot rotate the takedown lever. I have to remove the magazine. It has a magazine safety disconnect that not prevents the weapon from firing, but prevents it from removing the slide from the receiver until you remove the magazine, and then I can rotate the safety lever down. So I have to lock the slide back to the rear, check the chamber. I have to remove the source of ammunition before I can take it off. And unlike most other striker-fired pistols, you do not have to pull the trigger to release the slide from the receiver. And there's been numerous incidents of people with negligent discharges on other guns that require you to pull the trigger to release the sear from the striker in order to get the slide off. You don't have to do that with the VP9 series. Okay, now let's look at your CC9. Okay, I cannot rotate the takedown lever until the slide is locked back to the rear. That encourages me to inspect the chamber. I then have to, again, I can't rotate it down until the source of ammunition is unloaded, and only then can I rotate the takedown lever in the down position and just pull the slide back to the rear and it comes straight off. I do not have to pull the trigger. So another great safety feature on the CC9. Okay, now we're going to look at some of the internal safety features on the pistols, and I'm going to reference the VP9 SK. This is functionally the same as any of the VP9 series, and I think this will help kind of carry over an understanding of how these things work. So as you see, when I pull the trigger, this portion here is the trigger bar, and it goes back to the rear. Then if I look inside the receiver, I'm going to notice that behind the trigger bar, where it ends, there's this piece here called the sear actuator latch, and this longer piece here is the sear. The sear is what's holding the striker back to the rear when the weapon is cocked and ready to fire. When I pull the trigger, you're going to notice the trigger bar moves back and makes contact with the sear actuator latch. It pushes back on it, which pivots it down, and correspondingly pivots the sear down. This allows the weapon to fire. So trigger bar goes back, hits the sear actuator latch, that pivots down the sear itself, and then the striker can move forward and detonate the primer on the chambered cartridge. That's functionally how this weapon works, and we have a similar feature here when we look in the CC9. Your trigger bar is now internal. It's kind of hard to see, it's down inside the magazine well, but if I look at this angle right here, you see it moving back and forth where I'm pinning right there? That is the back of the trigger bar. What you see next to it, here and here, is one piece. This serves two roles. In the front, it is a firing pin drop safety. We'll get to that feature in a minute. At the rear, it serves as a sear actuator latch. And this longer silver piece here is the sear. This is what's holding your striker back to the rear. So when I pull the trigger bar pushes on the rear portion of this firing pin block safety and pushes it down, and that in turn, just like it does on the VP9, drops the sear down and allows it to fire. So same features of a sear actuator latch to get it to fire. Now let's talk about the safety features related to them. If we look at the VP9 series again, what we will notice on the right side of the receiver is this small portion that's exposed. It's actually a longer bar, but right here it's this portion. If I push down on this, you'll see it disappears, and when I let go, it comes back up again. Okay, that's your disconnector. Your disconnector serves to prevent out-of-battery fire. Okay, meaning that you want the gun to be fully forward in battery before you fire. If the slide is somewhere further back than fully closed, then the cartridge that's in the chamber won't be fully supported, and when the detonation goes off, all that pressure is not going to go down the barrel. It's going to go path of least resistance, down the mag well, up and out to the side of the ejection port. You can have damage to the gun or the shooter. Disconnector prevents that. There's a cutout right above where this disconnector is on the slide. When it's in battery, these two things meet. This disconnector rides within that cutout, and everything operates as it should. But if the slide is back, even a couple of 0.2 millimeters back, that cutout inside the slide is not presented. A lower ramped portion then forces the disconnector down, and it won't fire. Well, how does that work? Again, we see on this, if I pull the trigger back to the rear, the trigger bar hits the sear actuator latch, drops it down, and that releases the sear. But if I push down on the disconnector, you will see it drops the trigger bar down, and now when I pull back to the rear, the trigger bar falls underneath the sear actuator latch. It doesn't pivot it, meaning it won't fire. Only when I release it and it's against spring tension can it pull the trigger. Well, we see the same thing here with our CC9. Now, if we look right inside here, you guys should notice that is your disconnector right down here. I can push down on it. I don't know how well you guys will see it, but it's right inside where the slide rail is there. Okay, just like before, if I pull the trigger, this portion of the sear bar hits the sear actuator latch, it pushes it down, drops the sear down. But if I press down on the disconnector and defeat it, now when I pull the trigger, you'll notice the trigger, if I hold it down, you'll notice that the trigger bar falls underneath the sear actuator latch and prevents the sear from dropping. So same feature, same cutout on the inside of the slide. You can see it right there on the pistol. So that's a unique feature, safety feature. Prevents out of battery fire. Then if I look inside the slide on a VP9 series pistol, you'll notice here's your striker or firing pin right here in the firing pin tunnel that moves all the way forward. And then just off to the left here, you'll see this angled lever that's sticking right in front of the notch that the sear engages on the striker. This is your firing pin block safety, your firing pin drop safety. And as you can see, in its at-rest position, it's in front of this notch. It prevents the firing pin from moving forward far enough to strike the primer on a chambered cartridge. Only when it is swept out of position, like this, pivoted off to the side, can the firing pin now have free movement through the channel. And in the VP9 series, this is done by the trigger bar itself. There is an arm on the trigger bar that when the trigger bar moves back to the rear, sweeps that drop safety off to the side and allows the trigger to actuate. On the CC9, we see a similar feature. As I mentioned before, this rear portion of this section here is your sear actuator latch. This forward portion here is your drop safety engagement point. So as I pull back on the trigger, you can see it drops the sear actuator and the sear to the rear, but it pivots this firing pin block safety activation tab up, and that corresponds with the firing pin drop safety that you can see here in silver off to the side. Once I press this in this orientation down, but in the correct orientation when the weapon's mounted up, it clears the channel. Internally, there is a block, and you can probably see it just forward of the striker tab itself there, that's blocking the striker's forward movement. Once that's defeated and pushed out of the way, now the striker can move all the way forward again and incorporate. Another unique feature here while I've got it, you guys see there's a roll pin here that holds the extractor, but then there's another hole right there. You can actually stick this pin in, okay? And it looks like there should be a roll pin there. That's actually a gunk relief valve. That's something we've seen on all of our H&K pistols for many years. If you look at the VP9 series, you can see it on both sides there. And what this is designed to do is, as the weapon is firing, you're going to get some amount of carbon buildup, of carbon moving through the firing pin tunnel and back through the hole in the breech face. If left unchecked, you'll get carbon buildup there, and if you don't clean your weapon thoroughly enough, it can actually impact itself so much that the firing pin can't move through it. But with this gunk relief valve, the impact of recoil cycling the weapon will cause any dirt and debris that's there to fall out that little gunk relief valve, and then you won't have buildup on there. So that's a neat feature as well. Okay, and then just like we've seen on all our other H&K pistols, there's a little red tab here on the top of the extractor. You can see it's placed here on the CC9 as well. So if I have a loaded weapon, it'll force the extractor out slightly to the side so I can visibly inspect that there is a round in the chamber. That's just a good thing. You can also feel it. It's got a tactile feel if you move it across, because the extractor's slightly outside the weapon. You'll feel the difference as you move back. Okay, and then internally, as we look at the differences between a VP9 series pistol and the CC9, the other thing you will notice is the CC9 uses a chassis system, whereas the VP9 series, you've got all these individual components. The primary purpose behind this is not so that we can take this one chassis system, which the serial number is part of, and move it to other receiver sizes, which may be a feature that we see later in additional development of this pistol. But the primary reason is to reinforce all these components. By shrinking down in order to make everything micro compact, that means all of these internal things, your striker, your sear release lever, your ejector lever, your disconnector, trigger bar, all those things have to be smaller. And the smaller you make them, the more fragile they can be. So in order to reinforce collectively all of the internal components, you can use a chassis system. And that's what we've seen here. And that's what allows all of these internal components to be stronger as a group than they are individually due to their smaller sizes. Recoil spring assemblies. You can see here on the left, I have the one for the VP9 SK. You can see here the one on the right I have for the CC9. You can see functionally they are the same, just smaller in size, and that's a good thing. One of the key features about the VP9 being a micro compact is controlling its recoil. A lot of those micro compacts, because of the small size and the large caliber of full power 9mm, they are very snappy and hard to control. This is an amazing job, and again, the guys who know all the different H&K pistols shouldn't be surprised, but they've really got a flat shooting pistol that's easy to get back on target with their new updated design. And of course, the heart of any H&K firearm is in the barrel. You can see here, I've got my VP9 SK barrel on the left, my CC9 barrel on the right. The design using a Browning tilting barrel short recoil system is the same with the lug here on the bottom. Again, cold hammer forged, just like you expect. Large and generous profile of the feed ramp to allow you to feed reliably all range of 9mm projectors, including hollow points. And you can see I've already got, like I said, about 2,500 rounds on here, and I'm just now starting to, get those kind of bluing marks where the barrel makes contact with the slide. An incredibly capable barrel system. You can also see the differences here. You got your H&K marking, you got your caliber, but now we have the HK USA proof mark on the weapon versus the earlier markings here from Germany. But again, because the VP9 series is now proofed at HK USA after being built in Germany, you can see a similar proof mark. Now let's talk about the why behind the CC9, because I think that's incredibly important. I'm a huge why guy myself, and as big a fan as H&K as I am, just because they come out a new product doesn't mean I got to run right out there and get it. It needs to fill some specific role for me, and the role that H&K is looking for with the CC9 is obviously, as the name suggests, a concealed carry gun. And you may be asking yourself, well, James, what does the CC9 do for me that my P2000 SK or P30 SK or my VP9 SK doesn't already do for me? And what I would say is kind of the thought process behind this is that we have a EDC gun or a concealed carry gun for that purpose. It's supposed to be with us, not just every day, but for that day. Let me explain what I mean by that. I teach a lot of training courses. I see a lot of guys come to those courses, and rarely do they bring something of this size capacity. Usually before the name micro compact came into rage, we used to call these mouse guns, mainly because they were not only diminutive in size, but diminutive in caliber. Well, now we're getting these guns in a small size, but in a full power cartridge caliber. But again, my point is that most people don't bring those guns to training courses. And the reason behind that is they are more difficult to shoot. And when you go to a training course, yeah, you want to become a better shooter, but you also don't want to be that guy in the course who isn't shooting as well as everybody else. So what do we predominantly see? And I know guys will be able to agree with me here. You see people showing up with the full-on race gun. They've got the ported compensator and the huge optic and the X300 from Surefire and the extended and flared magwell and 20-round mags and all this kind of stuff. And the reason why they have those guns is because they want to be the top shooter in the class. They want to shoot as well as possible. It gives them all those advantages. We don't as often see guys running their carry gun. And even when I have a concealed carry course, I'll still see guys that show up with guns, in my opinion, that are larger than they need to be for that role. And if I ask them, hey, is that your carry gun? They'll say, oh yeah, sure it is. And you'll see guys post on social media, hey, this is my EDC dump. And there they are in some hotel room, and there's their gun with a spare mag and their watch and their wallet and their cell phone and their vape pen. But a lot of times I look at that gun, I'm like, yeah, but that's a big gun. And I've got to call bullshit that you carry that every day, all the time. And what I mean by that is when it's 9 o'clock and your significant other says, hey, you need to run out and grab milk because we're out, are they strapping on that full-on race gun, or are they going without anything at all, or are they tucking some mouse gun in their pocket? that would be the issue. So a lot of times people contact me and they ask me, hey James, I'm looking to get a gun for carry. What do you recommend? Obviously, we've got lots of options within the H&K product line. You go outside that, you've got any number of options. But my general information recommendation is find the gun that is the smallest gun that is both reliable and shootable. So you have to have both of those things. If it's really, really small and compact, but you can't hit the broadside of the barn, well, then that's not the gun for you. And if it's compact, but it's not reliable, well, again, that's not the gun you want to trust your life to. And that's where this kind of comes in. I love the SK size because of how much smaller it is. It means that it's easier for me to carry. But even an SK in some cases can be too large a gun for me to carry comfortably. I don't know about you where you are in the geographical regions of the United States, but where I am in the Southeast, and for what I do, the majority of the time, I'm wearing one of these great t-shirts from doworkdolife.com. Gotta love the shout out there. And shorts. I try and resist the temptation and the responsibility of having to wear pants every day. And that means that I've got to be able to strap on a pistol that I can wear with my shorts and go out into town. And even sometimes these subcompacts or a compact pistol just is not the right fit. In the winter months when it's cooler and I can wear layers and things like that, certainly that's when I get excited about being able to carry a larger pistol. But what I want to have is a handgun with me every single day. And now with the CC9, I have that option even when I'm trying to dress down to the bare minimum of what I want to do. And I've been carrying this gun every single day since I got it. I have not had a single issue with it being uncomfortable. A lot of times when I'm in my car and I'm driving anywhere, even if I have an appendix holster with one of these, the gun is large enough that it starts digging against my bladder. That's not comfortable. So I end up taking the holster out. And then I don't have the pistol on my body. I've got to put it back in when I get in and out of the car. I haven't had that issue with the CC9. So that works for me. So that would be kind of the why behind it. Now let's get into where I think this shines. And I worked with H&K on kind of our talking points for this gun, and I think they've got it down really well. And it falls into three categories: shootable, reliable, and concealable. Okay. First and foremost, so we've kind of already addressed this. The gun has to work every single time. And that is a real challenge when it comes to building a micro compact. The gun still has to do all of the things in the 8-step cycle of operation against the range of 9mm cartridges that you're going to carry, from the weakest bargain basement 115 grain ball ammo all the way up to your plus P plus defensive carry hollow point ammunition. It's got to run them all. And that is really, really challenging from a shootable and reliability standpoint. In shootable category, if I can't get both hands on the gun and get the same solid grip that I can get on a larger gun, well, then I'm not going to be as fast with my recoil management and probably not going to be as accurate. And if the gun doesn't have a really good recoil mitigation system because of the weight, the balance, or an inappropriate recoil spring assembly in the system, then it's going to have really snappy recoil and it's not going to be fun to shoot. And I think we've all been there before, where you shoot a gun and you're like, hey, I love the size of it, but it's just not fun to shoot. The CC9 is really fun to shoot. H&K spent a lot of time working on really focusing on the slide travel and where it impacts the rear of the receiver. That's where a lot of the snappiness comes. If you don't have a recoil mitigation system that prevents the slide from backing out all the way to the back and hitting super hard, well, then you're going to have that snappiness. The recoil mitigation system they have in here is really effective. We've talked about the grip panel size. Everybody I worked with at the H&K training course, we went immediately to the large back straps, and I saw guys who were having some initial challenges with the smaller one that was on it when it came out of the box. Immediately, quick change. Everybody was agreeing on the grip texture, exactly the kind of right fit for where you want to be. The controls on the weapon, the ambidextrous nature of it, and the ability to get both hands on the gun, and the reference points we talked about here are all things that we built into our training package, and those things where guys were having some initial kind of grip related concerns coming from larger guns. Once we were able to dial that positioning in, man, we made massive improvements in a very short amount of time. So it is a very shootable gun. I've got experience with micro compacts from other companies, and I mean, I'm biased here, but I'm telling you, you've really got to shoot this gun to see the difference. I did not feel like I was taking a major step down from a VP9 series, which is, everybody has said, is one of the easiest guns to shoot well out there, stepping down to the CC9. The next one's reliability, and I've kind of already touched on that. All of those things in the 8-step cycle operation, they still have to occur reliably, even though we've now shrunk down the dimensions, the distance it has to go, and the amount of real estate you have in there. There's just not as much room for a bigger recoil spring assembly. There's not enough room for larger components. And H&K has really done an amazing job and a diligent job in designing this in a way that allows it to be reliable. Again, we go back to the beginning of the conversation where I know I had a lot of guys who were concerned about U.S. production. It's all going to go downhill. They got it right. And they got it right so much so that they were fully confident. They sent these test examples over to HK Germany, and H&K Germany staff ran them through all of the exhaustive durability and reliability tests that are become legendary for all the other guns. And we can look back to references of the USP series and the P30 series and VP9 series and what they exposed them to for those testing, environmental conditions, exposure to heat, extreme heat and cold. They dump them in mud and sand. They even had a really unique test on lint. I mean, you really think about what you're doing with the CC9. I'm sure there's going to be YouTube guys out there that are going to be throwing in the mud and silly stuff like that. But really, for a CC gun, that's not your primary concern. What you're probably going to have more of is sweat and humidity carrying on your body and all the lint that comes off your clothing. And they even had a lint test to run these weapons through it. In all of that exhaustive testing done at H&K Germany, not only did it pass all these, it actually surpassed other pistol designs that H&K has done, and this is a micro compact. So I think you can really be confident that you are purchasing a weapon that is going to be reliable for you. And then the last one's concealable. I've kind of touched on that before. This is not the smallest gun it could be. I'm sure H&K looked at this and said, hey, we could make it smaller. They could have gone to a single stack configuration instead of this modified double stack and made it even thinner. They could have made it even smaller at the front and rear, but they didn't. And the reason why was they said they made it just small enough to still be shootable, reliable, and concealable. And I think, again, that this really meets the sweet spot. It's been incredibly comfortable for me with different carry positions, appendix, strong side in there. And it's one that I literally have not even really noticed being on me. Whereas before, I'm a larger gun, I'm kind of shifting. If I'm sitting down, it's a little bit uncomfortable in this position or that position. This one, I mean, there have been multiple times where I kind of, startle myself, go, oh, do I still have my firearm as I'm getting ready to walk into this convenience store or whatnot? I think you're going to find it very, very easy to conceal, even when you're wearing, lightweight clothing in the summer, especially if you have a quality holster with it. So I think all of those things come together to make this a very effective candidate for a new concealed carry role for you, especially a summer weight gun. Is it going to be the pistol that's going to replace all the other ones in my H&K collection? Well, of course not. Like I said, I have a lot of guns, and I have a lot of guns that I like to rotate into my carry cycle. But this is one that I have been carrying religiously for the past few months and have not had any issues with or any considerations. It's been just a joy to have and a joy to shoot. And I know that in the coming months, as we're now able to talk about it, I can showcase it at training courses and when I'm out there doing other demo and related things with H&K, that I'm going to be really excited to showcase to people. I think it's going to be a really big hit for H&K, and one that not only should you check out when you go to the gun store, but you definitely want to get some time behind on the range. I think it's going to change a lot of people's minds. So super excited about the pistol. For all the fans that are out there, if you've got any questions or concerns, obviously you can contact me through the website as always, or you can place your comments down here in the video and I will respond to them as best I can. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm humbled to share my knowledge and experience with you guys. If you are in need of H&K service and support or you need training opportunities, give me a shout. That's what I'm here for. Thanks, guys.